welcome to Food All You Never Wanted to Know. Today we're going to talk about how to make pie crust, the greatest pie crust, and it's whole grain too. And here's the recipe so you can write it down really fast. It has a half a cup of whole grain barley flour, a half a cup of oat flour, a half a cup of soft whole wheat flour, not bread flour, not all-purpose. If you need to, you can use all-purpose flour as part of these. Quarter teaspoon salt, a third of cup of oil, a quarter cup of cold water. And very easy way, and I'll talk about grinding later a bit, but this is a very easy way to make oat flour. You simply take oatmeal, you put it in this little spice grinder, and zip zip, you have oat flour. So the other ones are a little more in depth, and we'll go through that another time. So anyway, so I'm gonna.
What about the ice water?
The ice water. That's how you make ice water. Ice in cold water makes ice water. Okay. And here are the three flours that we're using. This is soft wheat.
Oh, I got my finger in the way.
Barley. Oat. They look pretty much the same color, a little bit, but they're all whole grain. Okay. And over here we have Himalayan pink salt. And we have, quote, real salt. And it looks kind of dirty. It's not dirty. Those are minerals. Both of these have minerals. Anyhow, those are just the kinds of salt that I like to use. I do have a little bit of all-purpose non-bleached flour here that I'll use. And if you see, I've already buttered using real butter. I've already buttered the pan, and I love to use stainless steel. So this is a wonderful stainless steel 9-inch pan. So let me get going here. So it's a half a cup of each of these flours. I'm going to put them all in the bowl. And I'm going to get a quarter teaspoon. And I'm just going to use the pink salt today, just because. Okay. And I'll get the salts out of here. Gee, de-junk the table a little tad. Okay, and I'll get that off to de-junk that a little bit. And you whisk this really, really well. You don't want this to be, you don't want to bite into a big hunk of salt. That would be just disgusting. So anyway, so you whisk this up. Now what I'm doing here is I'm making a single crust. You can double it very easily and make a double crust. So if you're making an apple pie and you want 2 crusts, just double the numbers. A cup of each kind of flour, okay? All right, and then you come over here. And I already have the oil in here, and I'm using a high oleic expeller pressed sunflower oil. You can use whatever oil that you want. Try not to use hydrogenated oils. Those are not healthy. They're not good for you. So this is already in here. And I'm going to pour a quarter cup of water. See if I can do this without getting the ice in it. That's a touch too much. Okay. And then I simply use a fork. You could use a whisk for this part. I usually just use a fork. Because then, you whisk this up really, 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 really well. You want it to be combined as much as you possibly can. Now, one thing that I want to mention is that with the oat flour, the mixture will tend to be a little bit stickier than usual when you use the oat flour. So I do have the all-purpose flour here next to me in case I do need to add a little bit extra flour, which I sometimes do when I use the oat flour. So then I stir it in with the fork. Be aware that when you're making pie crust, you don't want to beat it, you don't want to knead it, you don't want to be rough with it because you're going to end up with a crust that's tough. You don't want that toughness in your pie crusts. And one thing I forgot to mention is with those flours, they are all low gluten flours. Okay, this needs a little touch more flour. So I'm going to just add a little bit of that in there. So I kind of work it around and use the back of the fork a little bit. I want it to form a dough, but a soft dough, okay? To where it's not sticking to my hands. And always wash your hands before you start cooking. That's the rule. That's the food all you never wanted to know rule, okay? Never start cooking without washing your hands. You can go into the garden without washing your hands, but do not cook without washing. Okay, so then I'm gonna take my cutting board, take these off. Now, this is one of the secrets to this, is you take either parchment paper, which this is. You can also use wax paper. Put it on the cutting board. Take some flour, and you get that all around. You take your really nice dough, getting rid of the ball there so I have more space. Okay, and you put it there. It's a nice ball, and you start pushing down, and as you push down, you push gently in so the sides aren't all frayed, okay? So I start to push this down. As I work it down, I pat it out gently. And I do have a rolling pin, and you'll see how I work with that in just a minute, okay? So this gets, you know, it's sort of kind of like a circle. Then I take a little bit more of the flour. I spread it on top. Now this is a very soft dough. It's a little bit wetter because of the oat flour. So I put maybe more flour than usual. I take another piece of parchment paper, or again, you can use the wax paper. Now, you can see it through the paper. You start in the middle and you work yourself out. I'm gonna turn it on the other side because that's not working. Okay, so you work your way out. You start from the center, you work your way out. Center, work your way out. Sometimes I will turn it to make it easier. You work out from the center. You're trying to keep it as much in the circle size as possible, but as with most things that you do at home, homemade, these things are never perfect. So you're not going to get a perfect circle. Don't try to be perfect when you cook. The only time I use really exactness is when I'm doing maybe a cake, because cakes are a little fussier. Maybe cookies, maybe brownies. Okay, so that seems to be about okay. Let's see if good. It's not sticking. Okay, that's not going to stick. I'm so excited. All right, so you put that upside down, and you reach your hand under, and you simply flip it over. Okay, you pat it down a little. And then you find a spot where you can just kind of start getting it off of the paper. Oops. And see if it tears like that, don't get upset. Again, we're not here for perfection. Whoa. And see, that's again because maybe I could have put a little more flour in there. So you just work it around until you can get it off. And remember, pie crust, and this is kind of the same with bread dough too. It's like working with clay, all right? You can patchwork. You can patch it together. You can play with it. Just don't play with it too much because, again, you don't want it to be tough. And then you start to fold up the edges. Just, you know, you want it to look cool. You want it to look homemade. You don't want it to look like the pie crust that you buy in the store that's already been made for you. Like, that's lame. So this is real food. This is not fake food. This isn't done by a machine. So you're not there to make it look like perfection, okay? And today the rustic look is actually something that people will pay more for. You go into some of these places where they have these rustic breads and you might pay $6, $7, $8 for a little loaf of bread because it looks cool. It looks like it was made by a peasant somewhere in Europe or something. So anyway, okay, so we have the basic thing, and I should poke that with a fork. Maybe just get a little air out. Okay, boop. It doesn't really matter. So then if you want to do ripples, you can do ripples. This is usually what I do just because it's quick and easy. You could use a fork if you wanted to. Now it's starting to look a little more store-bought, except it's not white. It's not white like the store-bought that has nothing in it for you and no fiber. So anyway, this is going to be the pie crust. I'm going to do a pumpkin pie, except it's not going to be pumpkin pie. And that will be a video that I'm going to do shortly about pink banana pie. So there's the pie crust. It's all ready to go. And it was very, very simple. And I encourage you to try some of these different grains. It gives you variety. It gives you flavor. The oat flour especially adds a little bit of sweetness to the dough. I don't put sugar in my doughs. I don't like them. I like plain good, but it's not as plain because it has different flavors from the whole grains. And I'd like to encourage you to try this. So again, this is Food All You Never Wanted to Know. Signing off. Take care.